You've been there. File open, cursor ready, and then you close it. Maybe you told yourself your printer probably can't do it, or you didn't want to waste paper figuring it out. Here's what I want you to know. It's not your printer, and it's not you. I've been printing my own planner pages for over 30 years, back when two-sided meant flipping the paper yourself and hoping it went in the right way. I've tested the workarounds, wasted my share of paper, and learned the tricks that make printers behave. And in this video, I'm handing all that over to you. Here's what we're covering. First, paper. Which weight and brightness levels work best, and how the wrong choice causes problems later. Second, your printer. What it can actually handle so you can stop guessing and start trusting your settings. Third, what to look for in a trimmer, because the right one makes a difference between clean cuts and wasted paper. And fourth, how to evaluate a file before you buy it, so what you print matches what you expect. What I'm sharing with you today isn't just theory, it's what I actually use. I've tested it using real paper, real printers, printing and trimming actual planner pages. No theory, just what works. Let's start with paper, because this is where most people either overspend or get frustrated and quit. There are a lot of choices, but for planner pages, we're looking for something that looks good, feels good, handles pens and markers, and holds up to everyday use. The two specs that matter the most are weight and brightness. I have 4 different weight papers to show you, and I've created a test print with each paper and then used 4 different ink pens, a mild liner, correction tape, a white gel pen, and then added both a transparent back sticker and a white background sticker. First up, 20-pound paper at 92% brightness. This is Pen & Gear brand from Walmart. It was $6 for a ream of 500 sheets. Before we look at the test page, I want you to see what 10 sheets look like and feel like. It's light, it doesn't make much noise when you wave it, and the stack feels just a little flimsy. When I lay a single sheet on my dark desk mat, the color shows through pretty clearly. Now, I'll stack the 10 sheets back up and I'll place my test page on top, just like it would be if it were in a planner with more pages behind it. Right away, I can see ghosting from the back side. I can see the numbers from the calendar and the January up at the top. The mild liner didn't bleed through though, which is good, but the correction tape went on a little rough and it looks noticeably whiter than the paper. The gel pen dots do the same thing. Now when I flip it over, the show through is obvious, even without holding it up to the light. I can still read larger text from the other side and make out smaller text in places. And I can also see the outline of the white sticker. The text under the correction tape area shows through a bit darker. That tells me that anything you use to cover mistakes on one side might actually increase the ghosting of that mistake to the other side. The mild liner still didn't bleed through, but one of my more inky pens, the Pilot Precise B7, almost did at the end of the downstrokes. So 20-pound paper is cheap. It's everywhere. It's fine for everyday printing. But for double-sided planner pages, it's just not the best experience. That's why a lot of people move up to the next option, 24-pound paper. Now, this one is also Pen & Gear brand, but it's 24 pounds and has a 96% brightness. It cost me $9 for a ream of 500 sheets. It's noticeably thicker and a little heavier in the hand. When I lay one sheet on the desk mat, there's still a little bit of show through, but much less than the 20-pound paper. And on the test print, I can see some ghosting, numbers, and January, but it's lighter. This paper feels smoother and the correction tape went on cleanly. It doesn't stand out as much on this paper with the higher brightness level. On the back side, I can still see the larger print text and a little show through in the darker areas, but it's far better than the 20-pound paper. I don't see the outline of the white sticker on this one, and the correction tape doesn't really create that same issue with increasing the amount of ghosting for what it covers. So if you're just getting started and don't want to jump up to the premium paper yet, 24-pound paper is a solid middle ground, especially if you use a lot of stickers that help disguise any minor ghosting. Let's go heavier and look at 28-pound paper. This was my first time printing on 28-pound paper. I'd been seeing it online for a while, but I just recently ordered a ream. For me, it cost $16 for a ream of 500 sheets. So here's what 10 pages of 28-pound paper look like. 10 sheets already feel much heavier. And when I lay a single sheet down on my desk mat, I don't really see any color showing through. On the test print, I can make out January up at the top, but the ghosting is minimal. The paper feels smoother and looks noticeably brighter. When I flip it over, I can barely see the ink from the other side, unless I'm really looking for it. Overall, the show-through is very low. If I hold it up to the light, I can see more because the light changes everything, but in normal use, it stays clear and readable. The only downside is that with 100% brightness, some whites, like the correction tape or gel pens, can look a little creamy in comparison. And at $16 a ream, this may become my new go-to. Last up is 32-pound paper. Now, this has been my go-to for a long time, and I understand that some planner companies print on 32-pound paper as well. Now, this paper feels very heavy in the hand. It's even hard to flip through the stack of pages. When I lay one sheet down on the desk mat, it's just a sheet of paper. So let's take a look at the test printout. Now, this is HP Premium 32-pound at 100% brightness, and the current price is $24 for a ream of 500 sheets on Amazon. It is extremely smooth, and correction tape and stickers apply beautifully. On the back side, there's only a tiny bit of ghosting in the darker areas, and the pen and the mod liner are handled easily. On a side note, if you hold a pen or highlighter against the paper in one spot long enough, you can bleed through any paper. Just ask me how I know. I still love 32-pound, but at its higher price point, the 28-pound paper may be the better value, so I'll likely be using both. So here's side by side. We have the 28-pound at 92% brightness, 24-pound at 96% brightness, and at 28 and 32-pound, both are 100% brightness. Now, my takeaway is start with the 20-pound or whatever you already have on hand while you're starting out, so you aren't stressed about wasting paper. When you're ready for a better double-sided result without big cost, jump up to the 24-pound. But for the cleanest look and the least show-through, the 28-pound and the 32-pound are both excellent choices. You might be thinking, what if I buy paper that's already cut to my planner size? And you can. There's A5, half letter, and even some Happy Planner Classic sizes available online. And in addition to the size, check the weight and brightness of the paper. Another option is to have a ream of letter size paper trimmed at a print shop. I did this at Staples last year. They cut a 500 sheet ream of 32-pound paper down to a classic size for $4 total, 2 cuts at $2 each. And I thought that was very reasonable. So if you're comparing options, look at the cost per sheet for untrimmed paper plus the trimming cost and compare that to the per cost sheet for pre-trimmed paper. Now, one more quick note before you order, check that your printer can actually feed that paper size reliably. Now, let's talk about how to understand your printer's real capabilities so it works with you to produce beautiful planner pages. This is my current printer, an Epson ET8500. It can do automatic two-sided printing, but only for certain paper sizes. So it's still important to understand manual two-sided printing. To learn what your printer can do, you could search the user's manual, but the fastest way is to check what your printer driver actually allows from your computer. Now, I'm going to be using Adobe Acrobat Reader, It is the most reliable way to print PDF files. It should also be noted that some of the options and settings you'll need for printing different sizes of documents may not be available from smartphones or tablets. In Adobe Acrobat Reader, I've opened a file that we'll use in a few minutes. First, let's open the print dialog. And then I'm going to go up here to Printer Properties to change the paper size from letter to classic. These settings come from your printer driver, so they reflect what your printer can actually handle. I'm going to set the paper source to cassette 2. That's the main paper tray or drawer on this printer. Some settings can change depending on which printer tray you select. Now I'm choosing user defined for the paper size. Since I already have a classic size saved, I'm going to try creating a skinny classic. So I'm going to name it. The width is 4.125 and the height is 9.25, and I tab down to save it. And it keeps all my values. So that means they are acceptable. And I can trim paper to skinny classic size and then print it directly to that paper with this printer. The next question is, can I use auto two-sided printing on that custom size? When I come back up and check the auto two-sided printing box, the driver changes the allowed dimensions and shows the acceptable size range. Skinny classic is outside of it. That means if I want to print skinny classic size sheets of paper on both sides, I'll need to use manual two-sided printing. And that's also true for classic size. It's outside the range. So what about borderless printing? So designs go edge to edge. Not with this size. Borderless is limited with this printer to specific widths, not a flexible range. And that's okay to me. I rarely use borderless except for photos. So for most printer sizes, I use manual two-sided printing if I'm printing on pre-trimmed paper. Here's how to set it up. Since I'm printing on classic paper, I'm going to select my saved classic size and then click OK. The driver warns me that auto two-sided printing isn't available, and then it shows a pop-up explaining how to load the paper into the cassette 2. Now we're back in Printer Properties. Two-sided printing is off, but it isn't grayed out. I'm going to choose manual two-sided printing and select flip on the long edge. Classic pages are portraits, so we want them to be printed like a book. So that means the page flips or turns on the long edge. Then I click OK to return to the print dialog. I need to put classic size paper in my printer. So I pull out the tray. I remove the letter paper. I load the classic paper, and I'm snugging these paper guides up against both sides of the stack of paper. Then I close the drawer. Now I can go back to the computer. I need to scale the file for classic size, and then I click print. I will speed this up, so hang on. The first side is finished printing, and there's a pop-up that appears on the computer. It's showing exactly how to rotate and reload the pages to print the second side. So I'm going to follow the diagram. I'm going to keep the pages face up. I'm going to rotate them and load them top first back into the paper tray. And then I'll click resume on the computer. And now we're done. The pages came out correctly paired, page 1 and 2, and then page 3 and 4. But even if your printer doesn't offer a manual two-sided prompt like that, you can still print double-sided. You just need a simple test to learn how your printer feeds and flips paper. I put together written instructions and a test file like the one we just printed that walk you through this step by step as you print. You make a few observations that will tell you exactly how to reload paper for the second side on your printer. And there's a link in the description to get a copy for your own use. To demonstrate, I'm going to turn off the printer's manual two-sided option. So we're set up as if the option doesn't even exist. The first step of the instructions say to remove the top sheet of paper from the paper tray and mark a small X near the top edge of the paper, and then to place it back in the paper tray with the X facing up and on the edge that's going into the printer. Then in the Acrobat page selection options, I'm going to choose Print Odd Pages Only, which will print pages 1 and 3. I'm going to scale for classic size and click Print. Now, following the instructions, after the first pass, I leave the pages in order and answer these questions. Did the pages print face up or face down? Without changing the order of the stack, which page is on top, page 1 or page 3? Is the X that you marked on the printed side or the blank side? Is it at the top or the bottom? In my case, the pages printed face up. Page 1 was on the top, and the X was on the blank side at the top of the sheet. So this printer prints on the side that is facing down in the printer tray, feeds the page top first, and it reverses the page order on output. With that information, I can reload the stack correctly, and then I'll print even pages only and use the reverse pages checkbox so that the pages come out the right way. And then I print again. And here's the result. Page 1 backed with page 2 and page 3 backed with page 4. Clean, correctly ordered, two-sided printing. One more note before we move on. I mentioned that I don't recommend borderless printing for most planner pages. When I've used borderless printing on non-photo prints, I've seen slight distortion of the image, almost like the printer stretches the design to make sure that the design reaches the edges. Here's an example. I designed a letter-sized test page, 8.5 by 11. It filled the entire area with a 1/2-inch gray border, all the way around the outer edge. When printed normally, the printer leaves its usual unprinted margins, so you see a white edge plus the rest of the gray border. However, when printed borderless, not only does the white edge disappear, it's like the gray border is thinner than it should be. It's easiest to see if you compare the edges that I punched with my disc punch. Now that you understand what your printer can and can't do, you're ready for the part that turns a stack of prints into planner pages. Trimming. Printing gets the ink on the pages, but trimming makes it fit your planner cleanly and consistently. The first type of trimmer I want to show you is a guillotine trimmer. This one is on the small side. It's only 5.5 inches tall and 6 inches wide, which limits its use for trimming planner pages. But there's a larger version that exists that has the same features as this one. This guillotine trimmer includes both inch and metric markings, which is helpful if you measure your planner page in millimeters. The main downside is the visibility of exactly where the blade will fall if you're using them to use trim marks or lines to trim the paper to size. The finger guard usually stops short of where the edge that the blade travels against to make the cut. So you have a gap between the guard and the cut that you can't easily line up with the marks on anything. So you'd need to measure your cuts for the best accuracy. And of course, safety matters. Guillotine blades can be sharp and they're exposed. So if you have kids around, keep that in mind. But if you love this style trimmer, go with it. Use what works for you. Now, this is the trimmer that I've had the longest. It's the Creative Memories rotary trimmer. It has a swing out arm for wider paper, up to 16 inches, plus a grid and both the inch and the centimeter markings. What I like most about this trimmer is its safety. The blade is enclosed in a small case, and when you put it in the trimmer and then press down, it pushes into that button to expose the blade and make the cut. The rotary blade runs on a dual rail track, so you get very straight, accurate cuts. However, it has some of the same issues with regards to lining things up to trim marks as the guillotine trimmer. There's no edge or line visible above the paper to align the trim marks with. The rubber-like strip under the blade will eventually need to be replaced because the blade cuts into it. You can see the cut marks in mine, and I have replaced this strip multiple times, but I've never had to replace the rotary blade. They also have specialty blades for decorative edges, such as a wave blade or a decal edge blade. And they also have a scoring blade for making creases for clean folds. Next up is a Fiskars trimmer. It uses small replaceable blades. The blade cartridge pops out and the blade itself is very sharp when it's new, but over time it will become dull, so plan on replacing blades. I mark my old blades with an X and use them for rough cuts on things like chipboard. The coolest feature is the Sure Cut wire. A thin guide wire that runs exactly where the blade will cut so that you can line it up with trim marks or a printed cut line before you slice. Just note, my version includes inches only. Fiskars does make a model that's exactly like this with both inches and centimeters. It just has a different design on it. So if you're interested in this trimmer, check for the measurements included and make sure it's one of the Sure Cut models so you have the guide wire. The downside of this style is the ongoing blade replacement. The alignment feature is great, but the blades are consumable. Finally, this is my big trimmer. It's a Fiskars bypass rotary cutter. It's heavy and it's not portable. It's an excellent when you're cutting a lot of pages though. It's so big, it's hard to get the whole trimmer within the camera's view. With a bypass rotary trimmer, the blade runs against a firm metal edge instead of cutting into a replaceable strip. And the blade is self-sharpening, although I've not had this one long enough to confirm just how long the blade will actually last. And you can see exactly where the cuts are going to be at that edge because the finger guard on this one comes right up next to that edge as well. This gives you a visual line to match your trim marks up to. The trade-off, of course, is the cost and the weight. Bypass rotary trimmers are usually much more expensive, and this one is much heavier than the others. It has tall paper stops on both sides to handle large stacks of paper, and the measurement markings are in both inches and centimeters. I got this one during the Amazon Prime Day sale last summer. It was on sale at a tremendously good price, and so I decided to treat myself. It's currently $165. The guillotine trimmers are in the $30 to $65 range. The Creative Memories is about $65 for the trimmer. The Fiskars SureCut trimmers are in the $25 to $40 range. And one more note about the Fiskars, they do make narrower ones, but I find it easier to keep the paper flat and straight when it's laying on a wider trimmer deck than hanging mostly off the trimmer. So that's something else to consider. There are lots of options out there to choose from, but now you have some idea of what features to look for to make trimming your planner pages easy. So once you've got a trimming method that feels comfortable, the next step is making sure the file you're printing is actually worth printing. A great trimmer can't fix a PDF that's the wrong size, missing margins, or just laid out in a way that wastes paper. So before you hit print or buy, let's talk about what to look for in printable planner files. Picture this. You're scrolling through Etsy on your phone, and a printable file catches your eye. It's pretty. It looks promising. And you're thinking, yes, this is what I've been looking for. That's a great start, but it's not the whole story. The real question is whether the file is built in a way that it will print well for your planner size, your margins, your two-sided printing setup. Let me show you why this matters. This is the same test page I used earlier for the borderless printing example. The original is letter size, and then I scaled it down to several planner sizes so you can see what changes when a design starts out as letter size design and then is scaled to fit other sizes. Here is classic 7 by 9.25. It's actually pretty good. There's just a little extra white space at the top and the bottom compared to the original. Now this is the mini happy planner. When you scale something down, everything shrinks. The fonts are getting smaller, the line spacing is getting tighter, and the binding margin shrinks so that the binding quickly shifts into the usable area. Now, depending on what size you are printing, you might be fine with a little extra white space, but it's important to realize that you're not getting a true mini layout. You're getting a reduced letter layout. Where this really breaks down is with narrow sizes. Look at this skinny classic. Once you scale a letter page down that far, the usable writing area can feel cramped, and the binding margin becomes a real problem. You would need to put in extra work with some functional stickers to fill the extra white space and make it useful. Now, with a skinny mini, the text can get so small that it's even hard to read. This is one of the biggest reasons a file can look great in the listing, but disappoint once you print it. The A5 half-letter personal and pocket sizes scale pretty much the same way. There's varying amounts of extra white at the top and the bottom, more wasted space. Your margins, your binding area, and every element of the design has shrunk down beyond usability. The spaces you were supposed to write in aren't even large enough to draw a line through. So the first thing to check is simple. Is the file truly designed for your planner size, or is it just a rescaled version of a letter page? Next, look at how the file expects you to trim to size. Some files use trim marks. Others use a cut line or a border. Trim marks are those little lines in the corners that can be helpful, especially with a trimmer like one of the Fiskars SureCut models. But be aware, after your first cut, you start to lose the corner marks. And by the time you get to that last edge, all the marks may be completely gone. So you'll still need to measure for that last cut. Sometimes you'll see a file that uses a full cut line, like a rectangle, to show you where to trim for a specific size. And that can work well as long as the front and the back lines are aligned perfectly. If the front and the back trim lines are slightly off, you may trim cleanly on the first side, but then when you turn it over, you see little bits of line left on the edges of the reverse side. In that case, trim lines are a guide, but measuring to the final size is the safer approach. Another big make or break detail can be margins, especially the binding margin. Many printable planners use equal margins on all sides because it's faster to design. But for disc or ring bindings, most people expect a wider margin on the binding edge. Here's what you want to look for in the listing or in the file preview. Designed for your size, it should say classic or A5 or half letter, not just printable planner with no sizing details. The binding margin, you look for a clearly wider margin on the binding side. If it's set up for two-sided printing, those binding margins should be alternating from side to side. And if they flip through the pages, what does the page order look like? For two-sided printing, you want the page order to be set up so that it can print the proper back to each front. And just so you know, you're not alone if this feels frustrating. I recently spent some time trying to find really good printable planners on Etsy, and a couple I was sure would be winners weren't set up the way I expected once I opened the files. It wasn't about the layout design being bad. It was that it was not set up so that it could be printed correctly and easily. For example, here's one of my own printable planner files. It's 162 pages, a full dated year, and I include bookmarks so you can print just 1 month at a time if you want. Every section starts on an odd page and ends on an even page, which makes it straightforward to print two-sided. When you view it 2 pages at a time, you're looking at planner spreads, left page, right page together, because that's how you'll use it once it's printed and bound. If a file is designed for spreads, the page order stays consistent, predictable, and what you would see as the spread on the screen becomes a spread in your planner when printed. Where people get stuck is when a file mixes page types in a way that breaks that left-right rhythm, like a weekly section that starts on the wrong side or has an odd number of pages per week. You can't use automatic two-sided printing easily because you'd need to select specific pages you want to print and hope that you didn't get an extra page in the list that throws off the pairings. And manual two-sided printing would be even harder because the odd numbered pages you would need to print wouldn't all be actually odd numbered pages, nor would the even numbered pages all be even numbered pages. Here's another example from my own shopping experience. I bought a skinny classic listing because the photos and even the video in the listing made it look like I was getting a complete dated year. When I opened the download, it wasn't at all what I expected. Instead of a ready-to-print year, it was a single page template with fillable sections. So I would have had to create all of the months and weeks by myself. And while the design area was the correct dimensions, it was placed on a letter-sized page for printing in a corner. So if I flipped the page and tried to print the other copy on the back, it would not line up correctly. This design does have multiple pages per page, which is how many of the smaller planner pages are designed to save paper when printing on full-size sheets. When designed correctly, these multi-page layouts may appear to have the pages out of order in the PDF file, but once printed, trimmed, and the pages stacked together, you find the pages are correctly printed in the correct pairings, front to back, and in order. I ran into this exact confusion when someone bought a full-size dashboard calendar from me and wanted to print it on half-letter size pages. It's a smart idea, but you can't just tell Acrobat to print 2 pages per sheet and assume all the fronts and backs are going to line up correctly. Now, I take customer service seriously, so I created an alternate version of the file that was specifically arranged and designed on half-letter size pages. I had it set up so that it would print duplex correctly for her. On the screen, it looks quite strange. The pages are intentionally out of reading order, but after you print and trim the pages, it all comes together perfectly. That experience is why I always recommend looking for printing instructions and clues about how the file is structured. If the listing doesn't explain how to print the files, especially for two-sided multiple pages per sheet, you may have to do a lot of trial and error. Quick checklist before you buy a printable planner file. Here's some things to look for. File type. Look for high quality PDF files. You don't want document files or image files that require specific software. Unless you happen to have the same software as the seller, it may be difficult for you to reproduce what you saw in the listing. Look for listings that indicate instructions for printing and for trimming are part of the package. Design details. Look for two-sided printing setup and no scaling required. Print at 100%. Look at the page count. A full year dated planner won't be just 1 or 2 pages. Look for the photos and images that they're showing you. Do they show you the margin and the binding? Do they have examples of both left and right pages? Also look for photos that are showing actual prints of the designs in actual planners, not just mock-ups with images of the design laid over the mock-up. Look at the reviews. Look for comments about printability, margins, sizing, and customer service. Don't rely on the 5-star, cute, love it, and perfect. Ask questions. If anything is unclear, message the seller before purchasing. Now you've got a solid foundation. How to choose your paper, how to start taming your printer, how to pick a trimmer, and what to look for when you shop for printable planner files, especially if you want clean, predictable, two-sided printing. In the next video, we'll take a few files of different styles and sizes, and I'll show you the exact Adobe Acrobat settings to use and what to preview before you click print. You'll be able to tell in advance that the pages are going to turn out the way you want. I'll also show you how to determine exactly how much you need to trim and where to trim, so your pages will fit your planner cleanly. If this was helpful, subscribe and like the video. It really supports the channel. And tell me in the comments what size planner you're using. I've worked with every size from pocket to full size, so your answer helps me create tips that will truly fit your setup, because your planner should fit your life.